Hey everybody, welcome to Monday. I'm gonna do a post-mortem of the whole Animal Crossing afropuff slash space buns fiasco in sort of a wider examination of, we need a term other than toxic fandoms because that just sounds so blah. But there's no rhyme or reason to when a fandom goes toxic. It seems to primarily be about popularity. And so, no slight to any fandom. That's why I don't like the term toxic fandoms. It's just, it's a critical mass where something becomes so popular that things get stupid. If you like this sort of analysis, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. As usual on Mondays, boss fight update at the end of this video, and I'll gonna try to do a Kickstarter update as well because it's been a while and some people don't watch every video. So yeah. So this started previous to this. This is actually the second wave of headache that Nintendo has had to deal with this. Now, keep in mind, Japanese company, right? Japanese brand. There is not the same expectation that the Japanese are aware of the comings and goings of culture in North America. That being said, if you're going to market to a North American audience, there are certain things you should be aware of. Nintendo seemed to understand that you needed darker skin tones available, but they didn't realize that hair was also something that has a racial association with it. So a campaign started to get more diversity in hairstyles at Nintendo. And I thought this was actually positive, right? Hey, we want this. One fan even took it upon themselves to do some suggestions of the whole thing. And they looked like this. You'll see. Oh, I hate it when there's a banner on the top, but here it is. So you notice curly hair. There's the afro puffs. Though this isn't even the style they went with. This is actually more of an accurate way that the hair is styled. Then the braids. Some people would call this cornrows. My understanding of cornrows is a different style. Back in the day, we called these extensions. Cornrows went straight back. But individual mileage may vary based on your area. And then the side swoop part. Now, only two of these would really strike anybody as especially ethnic, really. There are white people who have curly hair like this. Tilly on Star Trek Discovery is an example. A lot of gingers have quite coarse hair as well, which is why we all hate Annie from some level or another. But Nintendo listened and put in hairstyles that were more accurate, more representative. I won't say more accurate, but they put them in. And this is the second wave of trouble because they just made the hairstyles available to everybody, right? Like, it didn't matter what color anything else with your character is. It's Animal Crossing. It's not, there are no tribal tensions in Animal Crossing, right? So here's what happened. A woman who goes by Fifi online put up a picture and it says cute space buns. And you'll notice that they kind of, it's like they did like, I don't know if these are supposed to be braids. I'm not sure what these bumps are because space buns are usually like slick across the head and then the buns. Right? Like, I don't know what these bumps are. But this is not actually a hairstyle I have ever seen. I admit when I first saw this, I didn't think anything of it because it's just not hair found in nature. But someone helpfully, in that helpful Karen kind of way, responded, ma'am, they're not space buns, they're afro puffs, not sure the correct name, and they are meant for black girls. Us white girls cannot use them, so I advise you to change them before it's too late. Now, forgive me for being a little bit nitpicky on this one, But for me, as a game, this is the dilemma. This is the no-win situation. This is the Kobayashi Maru here. Pick how you're going to fail. 2 Star Trek references this video. Because if you lock those particular hairstyles to only the darker skinned characters, one pack of people are going to say that's racist. If you make it open to all hairstyles in what some people would call an attempt to normalize those sorts of textures, also, I've seen blonde afropuffs on black women. The hair is dyed or they're extensions. I've seen it. Not common just because bleaching is hard on the hair, but I have seen it. And so, okay, so you lock it, what do you lock it to the dark skin characters? Do you lock it to the dark haircut? Like, you got to pick how you're going to fail here, right? So Nintendo just made it available to everyone, which is probably what I would have done, because I wouldn't have thought for a second, if a feature is available in a game, that anybody would be criticized for using that feature. Like, a lot of people who play Animal Crossing, have never encountered afropuffs in real life. They're not for them. They're not against them. They may be, I don't know, people who think that they're a not professional hairstyle. And I totally disagree with that. I have no idea why some schools and some businesses were, banning cornrows and afropuffs. I mean, they're, like I said, the braids with the part and everything like that. That's one thing. If you look like you've just come back from a vacation in Jamaica, maybe not. But even then, it's friggin' hair, man. As long as it doesn't have, the grow out, that's totally professional. It's clean. It's out of a person's face. That's all that should matter. I actually quite like the afropuff hairstyles, but that's not important. I'm just saying, I do not understand why people do not think they are professional. Perhaps because the twin ponytails are more associated with, being for younger people, but we're not in Victorian England. You don't start putting up your hair when you're married anymore. The whole politicization of hair is absurd, but it's very real. And so I understand why some people have these sensitivities. Now, the thing I note about this is, why would somebody think they need to helpfully tell a white girl to white girl that you shouldn't do it, you're going to get in trouble? Probably because she got in trouble for it at one point. So the shit just rolled downhill. But it didn't stop there. And I think that if it had stopped there, it wouldn't have blown up the way it did. It just would have been a WTF. It did go a step further, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point that out. The next wave of it, and unfortunately the account's deleted, so we can only go based on this. Somebody asked, too late until what happens? And this helpful, in a Karen way, user said, till others cancel her and put her name out there. And then people responded, and this is where I think it went wrong, is that, see, till others cancel her and put her name out there. And someone says, Cereal the cookie blobber, I like it. So you want others to dox her for wearing a hairstyle. And here's where the shit hit the fan. She didn't actually say no. And I think this was probably because in these sort of faux woke circles, she's damned if she doesn't, she's damned if she doesn't here, right? Because doxing is obviously wrong. However, in some circles, that's quote unquote not woke. P.S. Doxing isn't woke, okay? But she shouldn't be wearing the hairstyles if she's white. Simple as that. And someone said, answer the question, do you think she should be doxed? And she shouldn't be using the afropuffs. Simple as that. Now, I think that was her trying to get out of a no-win situation, but it wasn't. It was her answering incorrectly. And this is the problem with speaking for a group who can damn well speak for themselves. That, to me, was where I got annoyed with the Karening here. Is that it wasn't an actual black person who took exception to this. It was a white person telling another white person on behalf of black people, you shouldn't do this. Mind your business, okay? Now, some people, that's allyship, and this is why I can't stand allyship, okay? And this is where we go real talk for the segment. This is where we branch out into the reason I'm covering this ridiculousness a week later, because I've watched this crap. It's not the non-white, not male people, for the most part, who kick this shit up. It's people speaking on behalf of other people. And yes, some women do that. That's why it was two categories, right? Like men talk on behalf of women, and women who are not in the minority categories, women who are not black or Hispanic, who have the wage gap issues and you know, general inability to build wealth and things like that because of systemic racism. They're speaking on behalf of people instead of giving those people a platform to speak for themselves. And if they want to take issue with it, great. If they don't, great. But it's not your place to do it for them. That is infantilizing minorities. And this is what's so frustrating. Of course, then it just becomes a complete shit show, and it's lose-lose for everyone involved. And this was the thing I found frustrating as anything when I was an official games journalist. This is part of the reason I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. No amount of hustle on my part is going to surmount this. That instead of letting the affected people have a dialogue in the public space, there's this ridiculous fake hero complex where well-meaning allies think they need to write a piece so that they'll draw the fire. And it doesn't work. Every single time one of these hot take things happens, it just makes every person in the identifiable group some sort of target to one extent or another. And this is why, you know, if toxicity wasn't a ruined term, it would be accurate, because it just spreads, right? It just gets all over everywhere and poisons the environment. And this isn't the fault of gamers who say, if it's a feature in a game, I should be able to use it. I mean, I admit, I like playing Saints Row games with a character that looks like Nicki Minaj. It just, Saints Row isn't the same experience for me if the character, like if this leader of a gang is a white person. There's just sort of a lack of nobility. The idea for me of, you know, this badass black woman being the leader of this gang who becomes, you know, this pop culture figure and has strippers in the White House. Anyway, that sort of, you know, lesbian or bisexual undertones as well. That's a story I want to experience, and I have the ability to make that choice in the game. I will repeat again, it wasn't a black person who started this. Yes, some who claim to be black people chimed in, but we can't prove that based on an icon. People could be trolling, right? The Flashpoint, the person who refused to say that someone shouldn't get doxxed over toon hair was a self-identified white person. And this is my problem. This has always been my problem with video game diversity. Video game diversity is a bunch of people who are speaking for allegedly for others as an ally, when really, in fact, they're not an ally at all. They're trying to preserve their position in the hierarchy. Because if it was done properly, we'd be giving more people of color, and I say people of color in this case because we need South Asian people writing about games and talking about games. We need black people writing about games, talking about games far, far more than white people speaking for black people. We need far, far more black people with a voice in the gaming space, just because of the high percentage of black people who play video games regularly. It's important. It's a gap. It is a legitimate gap. And, you know, Hispanic people and this, that, the next thing. Though Hispanic people, there seems to be a little bit more movement. I don't have any current data on that. But that's one thing. But that means sharing the space and sharing the wealth and sharing the eyeballs with somebody who's not you, with somebody new. This means developing new voices instead of just consolidating the position of the voices that are there already. That's my problem with the whole thing. That's what I find not right. And yes, I am saying that I think somebody who doesn't look like me is more needed because there's a deficit of it in gaming, provided they know what they're talking about. And there are plenty of personalities online that definitely know what they're talking about. You know, their politics might not be to your taste, but they know what they're talking about. They are passionate fans of video games, and they know enough for their voice to matter. But that's not how we decide who gets to write about this stuff. And who matters when they write about this stuff. It's just somebody pre-existing decides to do an op-ed piece, and they don't go out and find people who are affected by this lack of diversity to see what they think. That would take work. That's too expensive. It's churn it out. Enragement is engagement. Don't take too long on a single piece. That's the monetization model on the internet. So if somebody happens to tweet something that somebody sees and it causes a bit of a firestorm, that's the only way you get noticed now. Because there just isn't any will at these companies to actually hire people who live this. And does that mean they're an expert on the entirety of the experience? No. But at least there's somebody who may have been affected by school or work deciding that afropuffs were unprofessional or not proper in the dress code, right? Like, that matters. The ability to connect to why people would give a shit about this is important. And you guys know I don't do a bunch of racialized content on this channel just because I don't want to speak for people. Now, the truth is nobody can speak for an entire... I don't speak for all women, right? I give theories and I give my own perspective. One of the things that drives me crazy, and it didn't always bother me, and then someone pointed it out, and I have never been able to unsee it or unhear it. When people start something, as a woman, oh, so you're going to speak for 50% of the population now? 51% of the population? Really? You can do that? What about as an individual? Like, this is my opinion. I didn't have an issue with that until someone put it to me that way, and I'm like, you know what? They're right. It should be removed from vocabulary as somebody who gives their opinions for a living, because you can't speak for all women. It's too bloody big a group. And any identity politics a group is too big as a group for one person to speak for them. And I'm only doing this video now in part because of that bit of feedback I got on Feedback Friday that I read about, don't assume you know my thoughts because of, you know, the boxes I check on the identity politics checklist. Like, don't assume I have these boilerplate opinions. And the fact that somebody bothered to leave that comment because that was important enough to them, made me think maybe I shouldn't just let this pass by. Because if it wasn't for that element, I would have just let this fade. It's, yes, it will get some clicks. It would have been done more last week. I didn't want to be part of the garbage fire. But this is the problem with these fandoms, is that once something gets a certain amount of popularity, and the reason the popularity matters is that these hot take pieces get generated because somebody goes, hey, people are writing about, Animal Crossing, or people are searching for Animal Crossing or Last of Us 2 or Ghost of Tsushima. Apparently not so much on that one because people didn't know it was out there. That game is still being spread by word of mouth. It's awesome, by the way, if you haven't seen any of my videos on that. But because it's that, they need to generate content quickly to ride the search engine optimization cycle, right? And so they put out this hot take that only serves to rile people up, serves the discourse in a positive way, not at all. And this narrative continues to form that some powerful entity in gaming is against gamers, because services like Kotaku and Polygon punch above their weight class in terms of developer opinion. I get the sense that that's starting to stop. Developers very much would like the coverage in Kotaku and Polygon, and nobody wants negative coverage of their game, especially unfair coverage of their game. So there is that fear out there. But I think developers are starting to recognize that Polygon and Kotaku and similar sites don't speak for the average gamer, because there's, based on, the traffic and then how many people play video games, the vast majority of people who play very, very successful games are not reading those sites. Just every so often, one of those stories gets huge, ridiculously huge, illogically huge, and they unfortunately have to do some damage control. But it's frustrating. And it's frustrating for me in part because I feel for the devs, right? Like, you work so hard on this thing and you have the best of intentions and you don't want to hurt anybody. You want to make a game that people are going to find fun. And then these destroyers of fun come along and frame something in a way that most people probably would not have thought of that way in the first place. But now the mind worms are out there. And unfortunately, it does happen in communities for games that are about happiness. I mean, Animal Crossing is so freaking joyous. People take the turnip market way too seriously, but it's joy. The music's joyous, the color scheme's joyous, everything's very round. It's a kawaii game. Like, come on, they're designed to make you happy, right? Nintendo doesn't tend to do drama, but now there's drama in Smash, there's drama in this, and it's just because there's so many damn Switches in people's houses now. The potential that there's going to be one asshole that wrecks it for everybody else goes up. And, when PlayStation's still super dominant, and I still think, even though I disagree with Sony's censorious practices, I understand why they do it. They just don't want the screaming. They don't want the negative face. I think it's more of a question why they let a lot of content into The Last of Us 2, but I understand that that's because while they're American, they know what their culture is. That's different than a Japanese company trying to guess. And that's why the anime games get censored and the American games don't. Is that fair? I don't think it's fair. Is it an understandable choice in a Kobayashi Maru situation of you have to pick how you're going to fail? I'm not going to begrudge a company for failing in a different way that I would have failed. For the record, I would have failed by, you know what? Is it a quality game? Yeah. Is the themes or the politics of the game possibly not to your liking? Well, takes all kinds to make a world, right? That's as long as there's nothing like overtly you should have known better offensive in there, which I still maintain The Last of Us 2 did. There's still that fucking cross in the fucking synagogue, and they haven't fixed it. And that's just a sign that even the legitimate criticism of that game is getting rejected. But OMG, game of the year. Okay, let's move on to boss fight. I'm going to do the Patreon thing in case you don't want to watch the boss fight update, but if you like this sort of stuff, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Okay, boss fight update. So I did do some editing over the weekend, not as much as I wanted to. I've been going to the doctor for various things lately. I've been letting the patrons know about what's going on, but I did get the editing moving. It is the slow part of the editing where I have to source sound effects and do all the green screen keys, like make sure it's going to work, that I don't have to reshoot something. Good news is it looks like the green screen's good enough that I can get by. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for the kind of cheesy monster movie thing I'm going with for this. How do I put this? Sorry, I'm trying to turn off a notification here. Be right with you. I thought I had these turned off. Okay, so I am pushing through. It will not be out the first week of December. I will have an idea of whether it's going to be 2 weeks in or 3 weeks in to December, but I am getting this show out in December if it kills me. And it might be kind of tough because day job is nutty right now. Worst case scenario, I get a break in my primary game dev job right now for Christmas. It's like the last 2 weeks of December. And so worst case scenario, I will power through getting the editing done the third week of December that I have off from that. I'm not expected to be doing stuff for that. Unfortunately, this weekend, I did have to do some day job stuff, and that took me away from the editing. And then I was just, you can only put in so many hours. So that's where I'm at. I did make progress though. And I'll tell you right now, the best part of this show is not going to be me. It's not going to be anything I did. My friend's kid, in my opinion, utterly steals the show this episode. But there are some audio fixes I have to do on that, and I'm not so great at that. So that's what's going on. Like I said, I'll do an update. But I'm very excited that this will be done in December, and hopefully I can get a jump on episode 4. I say that every episode, but I don't think episode 4 is as difficult. I say that every episode, and that it's a brand new challenge, right? I said this show was going to be ambitious going in. I outdid myself in that regard. So, okay, that's the boss fight update. And yes, I'm still going to try to get at least some t-shirts out in the month of December as well. There's going to be times where I'll be, rendering the show, and so I'll be able to stuff envelopes while that's going on. Cool. All right. Thanks everybody for your patience. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. Thanks for watching.